If you're a Street Fighter fan, you've probably heard of Capcom Cup, the ultimate battleground for pro Street Fighter players worldwide. Many would say it's EVO, but I would argue that World Tour titles is the highest prestige you could win for an individual game. Like Capcom Cup is 1A and EVO is 1B, but I digress. Back to the topic at hand. Over the years, the way players qualify for this prestigious event has changed quite a bit. In former times in the Capcom Pro Tour, a point system was the main part of the event. The amount of points you had could qualify you for an event, give you bragging rights for how many points you could accumulate, and affected your seeding for the main dance. However, since we moved away from the point system, the Pro Tour has become a little more lackluster. Nowadays, without the point system, you can win one event, stay at home awaiting for the finals, and not even have to worry about seeding because it's random. Today, we're diving into how Capcom Cup's qualification criteria has evolved since 2014, and we'll even talk about how these changes have impacted the tournament, especially with the rise of online tournaments. So let's go ahead and get into it. So let's rewind all the way back to 2014. The very first Capcom Cup was a big deal and only 16 players made the cut. Players qualified through different tier tournaments, Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3 events. Winning a Tier 1 event or a Premier will automatically qualify you for Capcom Cup. Winning Tier 2 and Tier 3 events would garner you points that if you build enough, you would qualify for Capcom Cup. Fun fact, believe it or not, what separated Tier 2 from Tier 3 events were that Tier 3 events were actually online events. So even in the first Capcom Pro Tour, online events technically existed. However, they garnered you points for the overall global leaderboard and not their own separate leaderboard. Still, tournaments were mostly offline. You had to travel, you had to play in person, and the stakes were high. So whether you did or you didn't win a premiere, it was still in your best interest to travel for these events, as the points still helped your seeding. So you wanted to travel as much as you could. This made for interesting tournaments all year, as all the big names would have to travel. In 2015 and 2016, Capcom ramped things up with a 32-player Capcom Cup tournament. Players earned their spots through the Capcom Pro Tour, which included a mix of premier events, ranking events, and regional finals. Now, what differed between 2015 and 2016 was that 2015 had no online events. It was all strictly offline, as the previous winner of Capcom Cup 2014, the winner of EVO 2015, 14 players from the global premieres, and 16 ranked point qualifiers made it into Capcom Cup 2015. However, Capcom Pro Tour 2016 was the tour that brought in the regions. North America, Latin America, Europe, and Asia were brought in as the 4 regions you could qualify for Capcom Cup 2016. 4 players would qualify from a regional finals, 1 from each region, and the top 2 in points of each region would also qualify. But the kicker was, these regions weren't region locked, meaning someone of a totally different region could qualify from another region's leaderboard. For example, Daigo actually won the regional finals for Europe in 2016, and MOV was actually 3rd in the Europe leadership ranking. So as you can see, the tournaments were wild because anyone could go anywhere, but also online events were brought back in CPT 2016 because each region had 2 online events that will automatically qualify you for that region's regional final. But once again, the online aspect of the event was so minuscule that it didn't affect anything really. Now, back in these times, it was really something magical about these years. The competition was intense, but it was also accessible for both rising stars and veterans. You had to prove yourself across multiple events in different regions, which made each victory feel earned. Now, fast forward to 2017, and things started to change. Online qualifiers began to play a bigger role in qualifying for Capcom Cup. Previously, the 4 regions only had 2 online events each. However, in 2017, the amount of online events doubled as each region now had 4 online events. Also, with you not being able to qualify off regional leaderboards and only the regional finals, the online regional events held more weight. But 30 max placements still would possibly come from the global leaderboards, which were still mostly offline events, so the point system still reigned supreme. By 2018, it wasn't just about offline events anymore. Online qualifiers became an important part of the equation. Regions no longer had offline events. All the offline events were the main premieres and regional finals. Regions now were all done online. So North America, Latin America, Asian, and Europe regions all were online events to qualify for offline regional finals that qualified you for Capcom Cup. But as we all know, that came with its own set of challenges. See, while online events opened the door up for more players, they also introduced problems. Lag, connectivity issues, and the lack of physical presence made the competition feel less intense. It was harder to measure skill when players could sit in the comfort of their homes, and while the Pro Tour expanded to include more events, it also started to feel less elite. Also, some felt that winning online events giving you the same amount of points as an offline event was unfair. Some of the excitement of offline events, the atmosphere, and the unpredictability of in-person competition started to fade. The buzz from the big crowds, the energy of live events, it just wasn't there. So next year in 2019, they lowered the amount of online regional events to a maximum of 3 per region, with North America only having 2 to get things back into a better place. Then came the pandemic. In 2020 and 2021, Capcom was forced to hold the Pro Tour and Capcom Cup online. We'll be brief on this, as during this time, there ended up not even being a Capcom Cup event for both years because of cancellations. However, the Pro Tour still happened. This was a huge shift. With travel restrictions in place and events canceled, the online format became the only way to qualify. But as we saw, this didn't do the Pro Tour any favors. Players found themselves dealing with lag issues more than ever, especially those regions with less than stellar internet connections. The playing field was no longer level, and it was harder to tell who the true top players were. Some regions had a significant advantage, and players were frustrated by the inconsistency. It even got to a point where players started forfeiting matches mid-tournament because of the issues. Now, fast forward into 2022, the Capcom Pro Tour consists of mostly online events. Only EVO of that year in the Capcom Cup Finals itself was offline. Everything else was online. Also, a big thing from this year is that 47 people was able to qualify for Capcom Cup that year, the most ever. The format evolved. One of the major shifts, more emphasis on the War Warrior program. Players from more regions can now qualify. 26 people were able to qualify from different regions across the world because of the World Warrior, with another 19 coming from online premieres. The EVO 2022 winner and the Last Chance qualifier winner. But this led to a bit of dilution of the talent at the highest level. Sure, it's great for diversity and making the tournament more global, but it also feels like a lot of players from lower tier regions are taking spots that used to go to top tier players from premier regions, which you can argue back and forth on if you agree with that topic. But the real kicker was, some might say while the tournament has become more accessible, it's lost some of its prestige. You don't feel that star-studded feeling like we did in the past. Like, yes, more people get to be involved and stuff like that, but back in previous times, the names that we mostly saw there were ones that we knew were the best of the best. And the online factors have made the qualification process feel less organic. But once again, it's something that can be highly debated. 2023 was more of the same, except you had 2 more offline premieres along with EVO in the France and Singapore offline premieres. Now, present year CPT 2024, Capcom Pro Tour has done better with going toward an even mixture of offline and online events. Premieres and super premieres are offline, but the War Warrior system still remains being mostly online. Places like China and Japan's regional final were offline. But here's another thing. Since coming back from what happened in 2022, there has been no global leaderboard, only regional leaderboards. Before, as we spoke on, having a global leaderboard led to a more exciting season because it forced players to travel. And now times, yes, we have automatic qualifiers like back then. However, it was beneficial for you to travel because the points determines your seeding. Now with automatic qualifiers and no points for seeding, if a player qualifies for a tour early, there's no need for them to travel. They can just not compete until the Capcom Cup Finals, as seeding is random because now the final starts off with a random seeding system. From that random seeding, you are placed in groups to duke it out to see who makes it to top 16. So this makes for a very boring world tour. For example, Punk won EVO early in the tour. There was no need for him to even compete again in the Pro Tour events to make it to Capcom Cup. So here's the overall point. Looking back at the qualification criteria in the early years of 2014 to 2016, those were the golden days. Back then, qualification was based mostly on offline events, with a lot of skill-based tournaments where players truly earned their spots. The top players rose to the top through sheer determination, traveling the world, competing face-to-face, and really proving themselves. It was the ultimate test of skill, and the stakes felt much higher. Players couldn't rely on just winning online events from the comfort of their couch. It created a kind of competitive atmosphere that made Capcom Cup feel like a true battle for supremacy. And it was exciting the whole year because you knew the killers were coming to every single tournament. Today, the tournament is more accessible, sure, but the qualification process feels like it's lost some of its edge. Players don't necessarily have to travel as much, and the online qualifiers sometimes bring in players who aren't in the same competition level as others. Capcom Cup's qualification criteria has definitely evolved, and not all of these changes have been for the better. While it's great that more players can compete now, the online aspect and more inclusive system have made some negative effects. The tournament's prestige has definitely taken a hit compared to those golden years of offline qualifiers. But what do you think? Do you prefer the old school way, or are you happy with the current system? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more fighting game content.